I want you to imagine a really specific, kind of deeply unsettling scenario. Like, picture yourself waking up in the middle of the night.
All right, you're totally groggy.
Yeah, you're groggy, maybe you just need a glass of water, and you walk into your dark bathroom, and you reach up into the pitch black to, pull the light cord.
Because your arm just knows exactly how high to go.
Exactly. Your fingers subconsciously anticipate the exact thickness of that braided string, and you pull. But there's nothing there. Your hand is just grasping at empty air.
Oh, that's such a weird feeling.
It is. And as the confusion washes over you, your brain catches up, and you realize something truly chilling. There has never been a pull cord in that bathroom.
Wow.
Right? It has always been a wall switch. So the question is, where on earth did that hyper-specific, totally undeniable muscle memory come from?
That's a profoundly terrifying concept because it completely bypasses our conscious logic.
Yeah, it really does.
Like, when your visual memory fails, you can usually write it off as, oh, a trick of the light or just a moment of distraction. But when your own gross motor skills, your basal ganglia, when they betray your environment, it's a physical contradiction of the reality you're actually standing in.
Right, because we trust our reflexes implicitly.
We have to. There are evolutionary survival mechanisms. So to have your own nervous system insist that a piece of your world is missing implies that, well, the world itself might be a fabrication.
Which is such a brilliant entry point into the material we're pouring over today. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a stack of excerpts from Philip K. Dick's novel, Time Out of Joint.
It's a fascinating text.
It really is. And our mission here is to explore a portrait of suburban life that is meticulously, almost like painfully mundane on the surface, but is entirely riddled with strange, unsettling anxieties and bizarre anomalies just underneath.
It's a world where the terror doesn't come from monsters. It comes from the terrifying suspicion that the completely normal street you live on is somehow, just wrong.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the weirdness that shatters this reality later, we really need to look at the suffocating daily grind these characters are trapped in.
Right, we have to meticulously set the stage for you. Because the text plunges us into a world that feels incredibly grounded. It's very specific to a certain era of middle-class American life.
Supermarkets, neighborhood poker games.
Exactly. We are looking at a neighborhood built around, evening poker games for pennies, kids building crystal radios in the backyard, and the agonizing social politics of dinner parties.
But shadowing all of this domestic bliss are these massive, looming, systemic anxieties.
Yeah, the characters are constantly quietly panicking. They're worrying about the economy, about keeping up with the Joneses, and ever present in the background, like static, the threat of the H-bomb.
It's a society desperately trying to maintain an illusion of utter normalcy while standing on a geopolitical fault line. And the text doesn't start with science fiction. It starts with the crushing weight of suburban economics.
It really drops you right into the mundane.
Yeah. We follow a character named Victor Nielson. Vic. He works at the produce department of the Lucky Penny supermarket. And the text drags us into the visceral, gritty details of his morning, and it is far from glamorous.
The opening imagery is just striking in its tactile realism. We find Vic in the cold storage locker, and he's wheeling out this heavy cart of winter potatoes.
Ugh, the winter potatoes.
Right. He is systematically inspecting every 10th potato for split skin and rot. It's freezing, it's tedious, and it's a deeply unromantic picture of the American workforce.
I found myself fixated on what he's actually thinking about while his hands are freezing on those rotting potatoes. Because he isn't having profound philosophical thoughts.
No, not at all.
He is locked in a spiral of pure financial panic about his son, Sammy, going to the dentist.
Which is such a relatable stressor.
Totally. The text layers the stress perfectly. It's April, which means income tax time. Their savings account is practically entirely depleted, and Vic is absolutely dreading the incoming bill for Sammy's dental x-rays.
It's just a $10 bill, but in this context, it's crushing.
Exactly. The anxiety is so acute that he actually abandons the potato cart, walks over to a payphone by the canned soup aisle, and calls his wife, Margot, purely to see if the appointment actually happened.
And notice the profound, almost unnatural relief he experiences when Margot tells him she had to cancel the appointment.
Oh yeah, she got tied up with some neighborhood petition.
Right, and Vic couldn't care less about the civic duty of the petition. His internal reaction is an overwhelming wave of relief that he simply doesn't have to pay that $10 bill today.
He's just buying time.
Exactly. The text uses these micro-stresses to build a hyper-realistic world. The anxiety over a minor medical bill anchors the reader and Vic in a reality entirely defined by economic pressure.
And the narrative specifically mentions a recession, right? With 5 million people currently unemployed.
Yes, it does. This isn't a post-scarcity future. It's a world drenched in financial dread.
I want to pause on his interaction with the checkout girl, Liz, because her reaction to that exact financial dread is fascinating.
Oh, Liz is a great character study.
She really is. Liz is described as this formidable girl from Texas. And Vic goes up to her seeking some kind of solidarity, and complains about business being slow, about the reality of this massive recession.
And Liz completely, cheerfully brushes it off.
Yeah, she claims it just means less work for them to do, and then she casually dismisses the entire macroeconomic reality of a 5 million person recession.
She goes so far as to call the recession mere democratic talk. Now, to be entirely clear to you listening, we are not taking any political sides here or debating the merits of 1950s economic policies.
Right, absolutely not.
We are looking strictly at how the text uses political affiliation as a psychological defense mechanism. Because when Vic points out that she's from the South and asks if she's a Democrat, her response is incredibly revealing.
What did she say again?
She says, "Not anymore. Not since I moved up here. This is a Republican state, so I'm a Republican."
It's geographical camouflage.
Yes.
She isn't engaging with the reality of the economics at all. She's just adopting the dominant coloring of her environment to avoid being eaten.
That is a very sharp way to put it. She changes her fundamental worldview like changing a coat to match the local weather.
It's wild.
It highlights a desperate, almost pathological need to conform, to blend seamlessly into the immediate environment to avoid any kind of social friction.
Well, Vic is internalizing the societal anxiety.
Right.
He physically feels the weight of the 5 million unemployed while sorting those rotting potatoes.
Right. And Liz, on the other hand, survives by simply adopting the dominant reality of whatever state she happens to be standing in. She just overwrites her own perspective to match the crowd.
Which makes Vic's next conversation feel even more alienated. He goes across the street to the American Diner Cafe on his break and sits down with Jack Barnes.
The shoe salesman.
Yeah, the shoe salesman. And the physical description of Jack is so uncomfortable. He has this permanently wilted look, like he's been steamed and baked all day inside his nylon shirt and slacks.
You can practically smell the stale diner coffee and the sweat.
Totally. And Jack is just a geyser of complaints.
Jack manifests a completely different strain of suburban anxiety. Because while Vic is worried about dental bills, Jack is consumed by cultural and moral panic.
Right, and Vic tries to elevate the conversation. Right.
Right.
He attempts to show Jack a Book of the Month club brochure featuring Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin.
And Vic makes a point to mention that this is the same club that sent out Toynbee's massive, dense historical works.
Because Vic is desperately trying to signal his intellectual status.
Yeah.
He works in produce, but he really wants Jack to know he reads Toynbee.
But Jack utterly rejects the olive branch. He launches into this bitter rant about how the country needs science, not novels.
He lists this whole litany of grievances: juvenile delinquency, teenagers smashing up cars, smut in the culture, the terrifying reality of hydrogen bombs.
And, absurdly, in the exact same breath, the rising price of his morning coffee.
It's all the same level of threat to him.
Exactly. For Jack, novels, especially literature he perceives as digging up dirt coming to the surface, represent a messy, unmanageable, deeply flawed human reality. He doesn't want to examine society. He wants to pave over it with what he calls American science.
Let's dig into that longing for science. Why does a shoe salesman sitting in a sweltering nylon shirt think that science is the antidote to teenagers acting out and coffee getting too expensive?
Well, Jack's longing for science is actually a displaced desire for absolute control in a world that feels deeply unstable and terrifying.
That makes a lot of sense.
Science, in his rigid mindset, offers unbreakable rules. It offers clear solutions and predictable outcomes.
Yeah.
Novels, history, social issues, these deal with ambiguity, emotion, and human fallibility.
And Jack hates ambiguity.
Right. He looks at the world, the looming threat of nuclear annihilation, the shifting cultural norms, his own lack of upward mobility, and he feels entirely helpless. He craves a systemic fix.
He wants a mathematical formula that will solve the chaos of human behavior, right? Just to ensure his life remains static and comfortable.
Exactly. He wants a world engineered to be safe.
Which perfectly transitions into how these characters view the ultimate engineered product: their cars.
Oh, the cars are so important in this text.
They are doing so much heavy lifting as symbols of status and consumerism.
The cars are the ultimate outward projection of their internal anxieties.
We see Margot driving a Volkswagen Beetle,
Hmm.
and she is engaged in a constant, exhausting internal monologue justifying this car.
She insists on calling it the smartest investment.
Yes, she praises the precise German engineering and the high trade in equity. But her son, Sammy, absolutely loathes the thing. He complains bitterly that it's a dinky little car that looks like a Beetle and calls it a kid's car.
He wants his family to drive a Mercury.
Naturally.
Margot's defense of the VW is just a masterclass in economic rationalization. She focuses hyper-specifically on equity, fuel efficiency, and practicality because that is all her constrained financial reality allows her to value.
She has to convince herself she likes it.
She has convinced herself that she prefers practicality over luxury. But the text exposes this lie beautifully. As she is waiting in the supermarket parking lot, a shiny red Tucker sedan sails majestically past them.
Both Margot and Sammy just freeze and stare at it in pure awe. Margot, the champion of sensible German engineering, literally murmurs aloud, "I do envy that woman."
The juxtaposition is stark and intentional. The VW represents the inescapable reality of their lives. It's precise, practical, heavily budgeted, but ultimately diminutive and uninspiring.
And the Tucker.
The Tucker, conversely, represents radical, almost aggressive success. The text describes it as wonderfully styled but far too large to be practical. It is the unattainable American dream cruising right past their practical little lives, mocking your sensible choices.
I really want you, the listener, to think about your own daily routines for a second. Think about your morning commute, the parking lot at your office, the brands your neighbors buy.
It's universally relatable.
How much of your daily stress, your internal monologue, is tied to these exact same micro-status symbols? Are we really operating any differently from Vic, sweating over his grocery store job while dreaming of something more creative?
Probably not.
Or Margot, vigorously defending her highly practical car while secretly lusting after the luxury sedan gliding past her? The psychological toll of constantly calibrating your self-worth against your neighbor's purchases is exhausting just to read about.
It is deeply draining. And that exhaustion from just trying to keep up appearances sets up the next critical layer of the text. Because the people living right next door to Vic and Margot have evolved completely different survival strategies for this exact same high-pressure suburban fishbowl.
It's fascinating how different they are.
We are presented with two diametrically opposed methods of navigating this world, embodied by Bill Black and Ragle Gumm.
Let's look at the ultimate conformist first, Bill Black. Bill is the neighborhood's eager functionary. He works for the city water department. And his physical description tells you everything you need to know about his psychology.
He's very specific visually.
He wears these incredibly tight Ivy League pants, a button-down collar, and he sports this stylish, cropped haircut that reminds Ragle of a military buzz cut. He walks to work every day, striding along the sidewalk like a rigid beanpole trapped in unnaturally tight clothes.
We get a brilliant dissecting analysis of Bill through Ragle's internal monologue. Ragle notices the auditory details, how Bill's voice is artificially speeded up, pitched too high, taking on a shrill, nervous quality.
But Ragle doesn't just dismiss him, does he?
No, Ragle is observant enough not to entirely dismiss him as a fool. He identifies Bill as a classic eager beaver. Bill possesses absolutely no original ideas, but he is a savant at mimicking the authority above him, right down to the precise twist of his necktie.
Ragle actually compares him to an assistant professor teaching some incredibly obscure, pointless subject like 5th century heretical Christian sex, while simultaneously clawing his way up the university administration ladder with ruthless efficiency.
Because it's not about the work.
Exactly, it's entirely about the climbing.
Ragle identifies this as the timeless, brutal rule of corporate and social survival. Adapt or perish. Bill Black is the ultimate frictionless adapter.
Just blending right in.
Ragle astutely notes that if television were to suddenly become the fashionable hallmark of top social circles, Bill would have a massive color set installed the very next morning. Bill possesses no fixed morals, no verities, no personal aesthetics.
He's like an algorithm.
That's it. His entire existence is an algorithm constantly recalibrating to match the expectations of the power structure he occupies.
Which leads to these incredibly tense, painfully accurate social flexes when the neighbors interact. The Blacks come over to Vic and Margot's house for an evening, and they don't just bring food. They bring a carefully curated performance.
It's all theater.
They arrive wielding Cafe Espresso and catering company Lausanne.
We have to view those items not just as food, but as weapons in a proxy war for social dominance.
Oh, absolutely.
In the context of this neighborhood, bringing a pre-made catering lasagne and bitter espresso isn't about hospitality. It's about signaling a level of cosmopolitan sophistication that the host family supposedly lacks.
And while they are serving this performative espresso, they affect this intense, snobbish loathing for whatever happens to be on the television, in this specific case, a Sid Caesar program.
They want everyone to know they are above it.
They loudly consider themselves vastly superior to the idiot box. But Ragle points out a dark irony here. He thinks to himself that if the H-bombs actually start falling from the sky, the television's Conrad emergency broadcast signal is the only warning any of them would get.
It's true.
But the Blacks are so committed to their performative elitism that they would probably ignore the air raid sirens just because they were broadcast on TV.
It is the pinnacle of performative elitism. They are desperately trying to hop up to the next notch on the social ladder by consuming the correct exotic foods and rejecting the incorrect mass entertainment.
It sounds exhausting.
It is. Now, to understand just how suffocating this is, we have to look at the man who actively refuses to play this game, Ragle Gumm.
Ragle is easily the most fascinating character in this ecosystem. He's 46 years old, unmarried, and lives with his sister Margot and her husband Vic.
And he has a very different background.
He's an ex-military man who spent 2 years stationed on a minuscule, isolated Pacific atoll manning a weather station. He drinks his beer warm, straight from the can. He wears a baggy, unstructured green knit tie. And he proudly, almost defiantly, refers to himself as a bum.
Ragle represents the nomadic mind. He is an active, conscious rejection of the suburban treadmill.
There's a highly revealing conversation he has with Ginny Black, Bill's wife, that perfectly encapsulates this friction.
Because the setting itself is really evocative.
Yeah, Junie is standing out in the cold garage on the bare concrete in her bare feet, wearing Slim Jims, those trendy tight pants of the era, doing the household laundry. Ragle wanders over, and they immediately fall into a tense discussion about marriage, stability, and settling down.
Junie essentially corners him. She asks if he ever gets lonely not having a wife to care for him and a little home of his own to maintain.
She is aggressively pushing the standard sanctioned narrative. Get married, buy the house, acquire the security.
And Ragle flatly rejects the premise. He tells her he possesses a deep, fundamental resistance to permanence. He refuses to be defined by the acquisition of one house, one wife, children's slippers, and a pipe.
He brings up his past to justify this, mentioning his first marriage to a woman who is intensely ambitious. Her ultimate driving goal in life was to acquire enough status to host garden parties and serve barbecues on a paved patio.
Junie's response to that is chilling in its lack of self-awareness.
What does she say?
She actually defends the ambitious ex-wife. She says to Ragle, it's natural to want to live graciously, and the text explicitly points out that Junie pulled the phrase live graciously directly from the pages of a glossy home and garden magazine. That phrase highlights the absolute artificiality of the desires being chased by people like Junie and Bill. They aren't generating their own life goals. They are absorbing them from advertisements and lifestyle magazines.
So they're just playing a part.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the author is using Ragle to sharply, aggressively critique the rigid, suffocating expectations of the nuclear family. Ragle looks at the forced barbecues, the aspirational patios, the tight Ivy League pants, the sheer agony of constantly calibrating status, and he simply opts out.
Let's build an analogy here. Imagine suburban life as this massive, multi-lane, high-speed treadmill. Everyone around Ragle is sprinting on it.
Just running themselves ragged.
They are sweating, constantly glancing sideways to see if the neighbor has newer running shoes or better form. Entirely convinced that if they just run fast enough and match the pace of the group, they will eventually reach some magical, glowing destination called gracious living.
And the cruelty of the treadmill is that the speed is entirely dictated by the neighbors.
Yep.
If Bill Black decides to sprint by buying a new car, Vic Nielson is forced to sprint just to not get thrown off the back of the machine. It requires constant, exhausting kinetic energy just to remain stationary in the social hierarchy.
Exactly. And Ragle is the guy who simply refuses to step onto the belt. He is standing off to the side, drinking his warm beer, watching them all sweat, pointing out that the machine is bolted to the floor and isn't actually taking them anywhere.
Which brings us to the supreme, almost absurd irony of the text. Ragle, the man who rejects the corporate hierarchy, the guy who refuses the mortgage and calls himself a bum, is actually the most famous, the most vital, and the most financially successful person in this entire community.
And his method of making a living is completely bizarre.
Bizarre is the right word.
He doesn't have a boss, he doesn't have a commute, but he works grueling 14-hour days, 7 days a week. His entire life is dedicated to a daily newspaper contest called Where Will the Little Green Man Be Next?
Which sounds like a children's game.
Right, but he isn't just playing for fun. He is the undisputed national champion. He has won this contest consistently every single day for 2 straight years.
We must emphasize that this is not a casual morning crossword puzzle for him. Ragle has mutated a silly box-top-style newspaper game into an agonizing, all-consuming scientific obsession.
His living room must be a nightmare.
The text describes his living room as a claustrophobic command center, filled with creaking stacks of files, heavy reference books, complex charts, and hand-drawn graphs. He attacks this trivial contest with the rigorous intensity of an aerospace engineer or a forensic accountant.
When Bill Black casually refers to what Ragle does as guessing, Ragle is deeply, genuinely insulted. He aggressively corrects him, stating that his process is more akin to filing a highly complex daily income tax return.
He takes it very seriously.
He really does. He keeps meticulous historical records. He does rigorous addition and subtraction. He uses a slide rule. He has even engineered his own piece of technology to solve the puzzle, a sequence scanner.
The sequence scanner is a brilliant, highly technical detail that warrants close examination. I want to try to visualize how he uses this for you. He takes opaque replicas of past contest entries.
Right.
On each replica, a single point emits light, representing where the little green man appeared on that specific day.
So he's essentially creating a physical flipbook of data points.
Precisely. By flying these opaque entries in chronological order, he creates a visual sequence. He views the moving dot of light as it shifts across the grid from day to day, and to his unique neurological makeup, these chaotic motions begin to form a recognizable pattern.
That is wild.
He is plotting the time element, the file of historical data, and then he maps it onto the spatial grid. It's an incredibly technical geometric approach to what is essentially a random guessing game.
But the inputs he is feeding into this highly technical machine are utter nonsense. The clues the newspaper provides are surrealist poetry. Let's look at the exact clues provided in the text. One of the prompts is, a swallow is as great as a mile.
And how does a mind like Ragle's process a phrase that breaks the laws of logic?
He definitely doesn't use the slide rule for that.
No, he abandons the slide rule and utilizes a rapid-fire stream of subconscious free association.
I want to trace his exact cognitive leaps, because it is a wild ride. He reads the word swallow. Swallow immediately suggests the act of flying.
Okay, flying.
Flying suggests birds returning to Capistrano in California. The phrase great as a mile reminds his literary mind of the great white whale, Moby Dick. The image of the swallow flying over the water makes him think of the biblical ark and the dove.
The dove brings the olive branch?
Exactly. An olive branch makes him think of Greece. Greece makes him think of Greek immigrants operating restaurants in America. Restaurants mean eating. And what is the synonym for eating? To swallow. Boom! He completes the circle.
It is a remarkable, almost manic chain of subliminal logic. Another clue provided is the bell tolled on Teehee.
How does he even approach that?
He instantly connects bell and Teehee to a sense of effeminacy, which leaps to John Donne's famous poem, For Whom the Bell Tolls, which then links to the Hemingway novel of the same name. Tea phonetically becomes the beverage, tea. He visualizes ringing a bell to get tea served. A tiny silver bell at a historic mission. The mission at Capistrano. Everything circles back, twisting through literature, phonetics, and geography until it aligns with his subliminal instincts.
He is operating on a totally different frequency than everyone else. But the narrative takes a massive, jarring turn when Ragle receives a visit from Mr. Lowry.
The newspaper representative.
Yes, a high-ranking representative from the Gazette newspaper that runs the contest. Lowry shows up at the house, described as looking like a soft, kindly minister, ostensibly to deliver some prize checks and ask a mundane question about Ragle's latest entry grid.
And Ragle asks him a direct question.
Right. Ragle, feeling conversational, half-jokingly asks Lowry if the bizarre clues actually mean anything or if it's all just a random setup.
Lowry's response shatters the illusion of the contest. He calmly admits that the clues possess absolutely no literal meaning. He tells Ragle point blank, you work from an aesthetic, not a rational standpoint.
An aesthetic standpoint.
Yes. He compares Ragle's process to that of a master vase maker. Ragle isn't mathematically calculating a predetermined answer. He is viewing an incomplete pattern in space and time, and his brain intuitively anticipates where the next point must fall to complete the aesthetic shape.
I'm hung up on the implications of that. He is dedicating 14 hours a day with slide rules and charts, but ultimately, he is not solving a math equation. He is completing a work of abstract art.
And Lowry goes further, revealing the terrifying mathematical reality underlying the contest. He explicitly states that the odds of a human being guessing correctly day after day, year after year, are astronomically impossible.
Because it's random dots.
Right. He uses a stunning metaphor. He says the odds against Ragle are like a stack of beans reaching to Betelgeuse, a star hundreds of light years away. In a purely fair system, it is statistically impossible for Ragle to maintain his winning streak.
Which exposes the massive conspiracy at the heart of his life. There is a secret, rigged compact between Ragle and the newspaper conglomerate.
It's all rigged.
The paper quietly allows Ragle to submit up to 10 ranked entries every single day. If his number one choice is wrong, they just slide down to number 2, and so on. And if all 10 miss entirely, they have built a loophole, allowing him to borrow against his past correct entries to maintain his champion status.
They are actively manipulating the rules of reality to ensure he never loses.
But the critical philosophical question we have to ask is why? Why would a massive media corporation go to such extraordinary complex lengths, rigging their own contest, just to keep a guy named Ragle Gumm as the champion?
Lowry provides a deeply cynical sociological answer. The public demands stasis.
The public does not want a fair game. They want the same winner.
Exactly. Lowry explains that the human mind inherently resists change. There is a powerful law of inertia at play in the collective public consciousness. Before Ragle came along, when the contest was volatile, the public was fine with chaos.
But then Ragle started winning.
But once Ragle was established as the undisputed winner, the public desperately needed him to remain the winner. They crave a recognizable name at the top of the leaderboards. They want utter predictability in their media. The text states it plainly. The force of stasis worked on his side. The vast reactionary pressures now ran with him, not against him.
Think about how profound that commentary is regarding societal inertia. We claim to want a meritocracy where the smartest or hardest working person wins every day, but in reality, we want a mythology.
We want our heroes and our institutions.
We want our daily routines to remain exactly where we left them so our world doesn't feel like it's constantly shifting under our feet.
It perfectly ties back into the anxieties we discussed earlier. It is the exact same psychological drive that makes Jack Barnes demand the rigid stability of science, and makes Margot take profound comfort in the precise, unchanging engineering of her Volkswagen.
They are all terrified of chaos.
They all crave a predictable, static universe.
But the universe is not static. Because while Ragle is upstairs, intuitively completing aesthetic patterns on paper to keep the world predictable for the masses, downstairs, Vic Nielson accidentally uncovers a physical pattern that absolutely shatters his own reality.
This is the pivotal moment of the text, where the psychological anxieties finally manifest as physical impossibilities.
We have to set the scene for this meticulously. It is the evening of the neighborhood penny poker game. Vic has gorged himself on the Black's performative catering company lasagna and chased it with that bitter cafe espresso.
A terrible combination.
His stomach violently rejects the combination. He gets terrible indigestion. He excuses himself from the poker table to go down the hall to the bathroom to find some Dramamine.
Even on his painful walk down the hallway, the theme of social conformity chases him. Bill Black yells after him from the table, deploying amateur Freudian jargon, questioning why Vic would take a tranquilizer for a simple stomach ache.
Like it's a moral failing.
Vic is forced to mutter to himself that Dramamine is for motion sickness, not anxiety. He is irritated, he feels physically awful, his defenses are entirely down, and he walks into the pitch-black bathroom.
And here's the exact physical action described in the text, and it's vital to visualize it. Vic does not just flail his hand at the wall, he reaches up. He holds both arms high in the air, his hands brought together, his thumbs extended and touching.
It's a very specific motion.
Very specific. He begins rotating his hands in a wide, deliberate circle above his head. He is expecting his entire nervous system is physically anticipating a light cord hanging from the center of the ceiling.
But there's nothing.
He is so utterly confused when his hands grasp empty air that he loses his spatial awareness, smacks his head hard against the medicine cabinet, and starts cursing in the dark. Finally, he fumbles around and finds the standard wall switch at shoulder level by the door.
When Vic returns to the poker table, the indigestion is forgotten. He has experienced a profound, terrifying realization. He explains it to the group, saying, I wasn't roping around randomly. I was hunting for a light cord I had pulled many times.
The certainty is what's scary.
He realizes with absolute certainty that this wasn't a clumsy mistake in the dark. It was a deeply ingrained, conditioned reflex coded into his involuntary nervous system. The terror stems from the fact that he has never lived in a house with a pull cord. Every house he has ever lived in, every store he shops at, every friend's place he visits, they all have modern wall switches.
He looks at his friends, visibly shaken, and asks, ever had that happen to you? Reached for a switch that didn't exist. And I want to pose that exact question to you listening. What would you actually do in that scenario?
It's a heavy question.
If your physical body, the muscles in your arms and hands, vividly and undeniably remembered a daily routine from a place that logically, historically, does not exist in your memory, would you let your friends laugh it off and explain it away, or would it terrify you to your core?
Because gaslighting him and explaining it away is exactly what his friends immediately coordinate to do.
They don't even miss a beat.
The group's reaction at the poker table is a masterclass in psychological deflection and the maintenance of the status quo. They are suddenly confronted with an anomaly, a literal glitch in the fabric of their shared reality, and their collective instinct is to instantly scramble to cover it up with rationalization so they can get back to their card game.
Junie Black is the first to deploy a defense mechanism. She chimes in with a perfectly neat, nostalgic, harmless explanation. She insists it must simply be a repressed childhood memory from the 1930s, back when older houses commonly had overhead pull cords.
She even helpfully suggests it could be a lingering memory from some rural gas station restroom he used to visit as a kid.
That's an attempt to domesticate the anomaly. And then Bill Black, entirely true to his character as the conformist intellectual, leans into heavy pseudo-intellectual psychoanalysis to neutralize the threat.
Bill is always ready with a theory.
He diagnoses Vic on the spot, calling the incident a reversion to infancy due to stress. Bill argues that Vic's physical illness from the lasagne triggered a subconscious impulse, causing his brain to panic and momentarily revert to an infantile, primitive state of grasping at the air.
Vic rightly calls this diagnosis absolute rubbish. It bothers him deeply. He physically steps away from the poker table. He realizes, perhaps for the first time, that he has stumbled onto something massive.
The text gives us his internal monologue where he wonders, with mounting dread, where have I been that I don't remember?
Which forces us to ask, how much of our own reality do we subconsciously edit out, ignore, or explain away just to keep the neighborhood poker game going?
Because Vic's phantom light cord isn't an isolated incident.
No, it's not.
Once you start looking closely at the text, the entire environment is humming with background static, tiny, terrifying inconsistencies that these characters are aggressively choosing to ignore.
Let's talk about the static in the air. Sammy's crystal radio set is the perfect example. Sammy brings this crude, half-finished metal frame tangled with wires down to the adults at the poker table.
Ragle taught the kid how to build it, drawing on his supposed memories of operating a radio rig during World War II.
A crystal radio is significant here. It's a primitive receiver that requires no external power source. It just passively catches whatever electromagnetic waves are bouncing through the atmosphere.
And what does Ragle casually tell Sammy he can pick up on this child's toy? Ship-to-shore signals, complex aircraft landing instructions, and local police calls.
He's essentially building an instrument designed to intercept hidden, authoritative communications that are silently buzzing through the airwaves right above their suburban roofs.
And when Junie jokingly suggests that Sammy might even pick up signals from flying saucers, the atmosphere in the room completely changes.
It triggers a visceral, immediate defensive reaction from Bill Black. The voice of ultimate societal conformity barks. There's no such thing as flying saucers. He instantly, aggressively categorizes the very concept as classified weather balloons or easily explainable meteorological phenomena.
He acts as the immune system for their shared reality, attacking the anomaly.
But the fascinating thing is, the others actually push back against Bill. Margot says she heard people have ridden in them on television programs. And Vic, our guy, whose reality is already fracturing from the light cord incident, openly admits that there is undeniably some oddball stuff going on up there.
Vic then recalls a specific, highly eerie personal memory that completely defines the weather balloon explanation. He recounts how, during a camping trip the previous summer, he lay awake and watched a bright object flash across the night sky.
And he's a reasonable guy, so he tries to analyze it.
He is adamant about its velocity. He states it moves far too fast to be any known commercial or military jet. He specifically describes it as behaving like a projectile.
And it's not just visual anomalies he's experiencing. It's auditory and physical. He mentions lying in his own bed in the suburbs, hearing deep guttural rumblings late at night.
It sounded to him like massive, heavy vehicles passing across the sky at reduced velocity. It wasn't just noise. The engines were so powerful that they physically vibrated the glass windows in his house.
And how did Margot, the champion of practical investments, explain away the fact that their house was physically shaking from invisible aircraft? She decided it was simply head noises.
Head noises.
She had read a generic article in a Digest medical magazine that stated head noises and ringing ears are indicators of high blood pressure. So she concluded Vic just needs to see a doctor.
It's absolutely incredible. The structural windows of their home are vibrating from the thrust of heavy machinery operating in the night sky, and Margot blames Vic's cardiovascular system because a magazine told her to.
It is the exact same psychological mechanism Bill used to explain away the late chord. If the physical reality of the world does not fit the sanctioned suburban model, you medicalize it, you psychoanalyze it, or you blame it on nostalgia for the 1930s.
You do whatever it takes to avoid facing the terrifying, paralyzing possibility that the world you are standing in is an elaborate fabrication.
To synthesize what we've unpacked in this deep dive, the true brilliance of Philip K. Dick's writing here lies in his masterful, relentless juxtaposition.
He really layers it on.
On one hand, you are drowning in the hyperbanal. A man meticulously inspecting split skin on potatoes, agonizing over a $10 dental bill, neighbors weaponizing catering company Lausanne, and the petty, exhausting squabbles over the fuel efficiency of a Volkswagen. It is a suffocatingly dense, inescapable layer of normal, everyday human anxieties.
But layered just millimeters underneath that mundane surface, literally bleeding through the seams of the reality, is the deeply, terrifyingly uncanny.
You have a man who is statistically defying the laws of the universe to predict the movements of a dot of light, subsidized by a media conglomerate that is desperate to maintain the illusion of global stasis.
You have military projectiles streaking across the night sky, aggressively dismissed as weather balloons, and you have a man reaching into the darkness of his own bathroom, his nervous system acting out a life he has absolutely no conscious memory of living.
The text ultimately forces us to question the bedrock of our own daily experiences. It asks us to deeply consider the immense, invisible psychological effort required to maintain the illusion of a cohesive reality, and how eagerly, how desperately we will accept a comfortable prepackaged lie over a disruptive, paradigm-shattering truth.
Which leaves me with a final lingering thought for you to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. Think about the physical actions you perform every single day without a second thought. Typing your computer password, reaching for your car's turn signal, turning a specific doorknob in your hallway.
Actions you don't even register doing.
Exactly. Your body moves on pure autopilot, trusting the physical environment completely. If you woke up tomorrow and you walked to your bedroom door and the doorknob was suddenly on the other side, if the doorknob was on the other side, but your hand still confidently, undeniably reached to the left, which would you trust? The solid wood and brass of the door you were looking at, or the deeply ingrained, undeniable physical truth of your own muscle memory?
It is a question that tends to linger in your mind long after the lights go out.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Time Out of Joint. As always, keep questioning your surroundings and stay curious.